These, I sent, what the place was closed on Friday. You don't know it.
If there's any bugs. I know. You can't run this. How are you?
Obviously get whatever they can be for like get in grade or whatever.
I thought I'd come real person. Good and glad. I'm glad. Good for you. I'm happy that you're here. Please don't do that, but I'm happy.
I swear. Anybody. I guess.
How are you?
Which you're moving it.
I'm in therapy now, so.
That's not fun.
Right, when it started.
Good.
That's the guy that I'm working with Harvard.
Oh, yeah.
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 They're cool.
Yeah.
It's stuff.
Well, the first thing I learned was they routers, the shanks. So it's whole second project. Well, find it right. Good, just
Yeah.
It's a wrap. It's a lot.
I almost kept they would also get I just need to.
Usually.
There's a house question, but I'll get that.
You wouldn't get a hold of it.
Oh, that's all right.
We can.
That's what I.
Or with the UP.
Not doing things.
We notify the post office. Later. Straight later, I think they're shaped that one company. Now I got. Nobody knew me up there. Down by. That's what I do. Give me a call tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm around town all day. We're also business today. I would say three.
Yeah, it's been.
If you get rid of all three.
digest half of it, let me know.
Well, yeah,
We do it.
it's tough.
Well, it's just a repetition.
Get to the point.
It is nice to see,
Yeah.
everybody's.
I guess that's the way to put it.
Something like that. But that's,
It's actually, so I. I have to just make sure I said that.
That's whatever. It wasn't just a safety, you don't just buy it. It is a very. Better every day.
physical therapy every day.
Yeah, they push
Yeah. That does
I won't be the rest of the night. I won't be
right, well, it's probably gonna be 2 hours.
You gotta have
So, sled doesn't have tracks, it's but I don't have it. So I don't have actually health insurance. No, I would want to make sure that you were part of it. It's all set. So I think we should come up with a plan. So that's why I think some of my guys lived in that big house. Say it's like $5 grand. I think if you do it, Even realistic. You only got probably two guys that's gonna do it. Yeah. I'll be, you and I are gonna jump into a suit, run out there. No, I don't think. That was okay. Yeah. They have to stop spinning steel. I'm just, I think I don't want to get.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, my friend. Oh, very nice. Make sure you tip the usher. Yeah, tip the usher.
Good job.
Because I took it, I wanted to know. You wouldn't have a sign like that. A share. That's different. Here, remind us. Got more room at the table. Is it okay to put them up here? Thanks right here. I don't like reaching over people's heads. It gets too close. We got a place for two.
That's right. Oswald, 125. Get rid of the maybe. Two up here.
Some real close.
Right up there.
There you go. There you go. Big night out. There you
All right, everybody, it's 7 o'clock. Make sure your phones are turned off. We're all gonna stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. We got a couple chairs up front still. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you very much. Roll call, Nick.
John Leo. Here. Jack Ups. Here. Mark Rondell, or Nancy Rondell. Al Dyke here. And Matt Bubiera.
All right, hey, let's keep it down. We got a meeting. This isn't a gossip thing. All right, any public comment that's not on the agenda? This is your time to speak. No public comment, very good. Okay, oh.
No, it's okay. I can see most of you. First, thank you for coming. This is full house. And I have just two quick requests, and you are not obligated to participate if you don't want to, but I would love to see a show of hands of folks that are here that are voters in Town Harbor Springs. They actually vote here. Thanks. Okay? And then a show of hands of folks that actually own property here within the city limits. Same thing for them. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It is. Do we have anything on Zoom yet?
No raised hands. With the public comments, we're gonna ask people to, when it's time for to make your public comment, to stand up, state your name and your address. And same thing on Zoom, people on Zoom, you will raise your hand and we will call on you and you will have to state your name and your address. We do have someone has raising their hand for comments section right now, so. Michelle?
Hi, are you calling me Michelle Borjali?
Yes.
Hi, so you can hear me? Michelle Borjali, my property is at 7515 North Lakeshore Drive up in Cross Village. And my comment that I would like to make at this time is that I am opposed to the parking meters.
Michelle?
Yes.
This is for anything that's not on the agenda, so you're gonna have to wait until.
Oh, I apologize. Okay, I'm sorry. This is my first meeting that I've attended. I'll lower my hand and wait till that time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Cool. So, there's no citizens comment. We'll move on to the consent agenda.
Those are good. I'll make a motion to pass.
Second.
Rondell.
Yes.
Bubiera.
Yes.
Ups. Yep. Leo.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Let's move on to the cemetery board update.
Yep, Bob Kalszewski from the cemetery board is here.
The only time I ever see a group like this being Polish is when the free beer signs out. That doesn't happen often. Yeah. I am Bob Kalaszewski. Some of you may know me, some may not, that's okay. I represent the city of Harbor Springs at the behest of the mayor and the city council on the Lakeview Cemetery Board. I sit on the board with the Little Traverse Township Representative Dick Schiller and West Traverse Township Bob Sanford. We have two employees, John Weber as sexton and John Peters as his second in command, and you know the guy's doing an extremely good job of making the cemetery look good. I do this report this time of year after we've had our year's events, we've had our audit, everything has been done, we've closed the year, and now we can look at the kinds of things that we're looking at next year and how things went. Our tax base this year was $873 million. Projected for this next year is $910 million. And we received $158,000 from our taxes, and our millage is at 0.18 mils. And our operational budget takes care of us very, very well. We have a fund balance of about $174,000. We budget generously on expenses, and we budget a little more closely on revenues. And as a result, this last year, our revenues were over by $23,000 and our expenses were under by $31,000. So our budget came in looking pretty good. We have not had any significant problems outside of tree damage from the wind and that sort of thing. We've got a couple of things coming up we need to be concerned about. And one is we have a group of people who would like to see a new fence around the cemetery. And we're working with them towards that end. So you might see that happen in the next year or two, but it's been dragging its feet for a while. Another is on the radar, we have a Catholic Church has a columbarium on its radar, and we are discussing it as well at Lakeview because more and more people are being cremated, and we're going to start getting people would ask us to have that available. So we're looking at those. And the other thing we need to do is we need to have about 20% of the trees in the cemetery removed. They're done being trimmed and that sort of thing. And some of them are just so old that the only way to really deal with them is to take them out. So that's a project we're looking for. We budget about $5,000 every year for that purpose, and we've never had to use that much. And we have somebody come in every year and get rid of the kinds of things that can be a problem. So the guys, keep the place looking nice, cutting the grass, watering it, keeping things looking good. In our revenue area, we are kind of amazed at the number of people who come in and buy lots, sometimes as many as 16 at a time. And we've got a lot of new equipment we've bought over the last number of years, so our equipment's in really good shape. So basically, it's upkeep. So expenses are not that significant. And as I said, John does a tremendous job as a sexton, keeping things under control. He researches everything he does in terms of dollars and cents. So the cemetery is looking good. The projection for the cemetery is looking good. We don't see any problems, any circumstances or situations other than those that I mentioned. So if I can answer any questions, I'd be more than happy to. Good.
One question about what's the drive behind the new fence?
It's ratty. I mean, there's places of it where, it's a woven fence and it's, falling down, coming up, and people drive by and say, they drive by some other cemeteries and they have a nice fence and they're thinking that, we should have a nice fence.
So it's just cosmetic.
Yeah. And then, it's been there a long time. And there's like 3,200 feet of fence.
Nobody's run away yet.
Huh?
Nobody's run away yet.
No, we haven't had any problems that way. Actually, we had to close our complaint department because nobody was calling us. We haven't had anything that way. So basically what we see on our radar is what I told you about. So we're expecting that and we're planning for it. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
most welcome.
Short-term rental ordinance?
All right, so in January, we discussed some potential changes to the short-term rental ordinance. Council reviewed some potential changes, discussed those changes, and asked staff to come back with some changes. Council didn't move forward with all of them, but some of them that you guys wanted us to move forward with. So some of those changes include prohibit parking on yards. That hasn't been a huge problem. Once or twice that's happened, but it's just to make clear to renters that they can't park their vehicles on yards. One of the big changes is we're putting a maximum occupancy limit of 2 individuals per sleeping unit or per bedroom. And the way we're going to enforce that essentially is if we see that they're advertising for more than 2 per bedroom, that'd be a violation, a potential violation of the ordinance. We have put a firm time by which the residents or the homeowner must put their trash and recycling containers out of view on the day their trash and recycling pickup happens. We also have a requirement that the owner shall provide renters with copies of the city prepared Be a Good Neighbor pamphlet. Shorten the hearing notice for the suspension hearing notice from 21 to 14 days. Give the city clerk the ability to suspend a license up to 90 days instead of just up to 30 days. And give the city clerk the ability to revoke a license after a hearing after a second violation, before it was after a third violation. So this gives a little more teeth and bite for the city to enforce. As a reminder, we only had 1 suspension hearing last year. So this is not something that's very common, but it still gives us some teeth. And other suggestions that we talked about at last meeting but decided not to move forward with were establishing decibel limits for short-term rentals, lengthening quiet hours, and prohibiting on-street parking by short-term rental tenants. Those were all deemed too difficult to enforce. And with regards to other aspect of the character of the neighborhood and in terms of limits to short-term rentals, that is something that the planning commission will likely take up at their next meeting or over the course of several meetings. So right now, we're looking at this update for the short-term rental ordinance to be more of a behavior nuisance enforcement type of updates as opposed to a real consideration of how we want short-term rentals to look in the city. So that will come up back to council probably in a few months or so. So a recommendation would be to discuss this ordinance. If you have any changes, we can go forward with those. But if you're fine with the changes as proposed, I'd recommend approval.
Everyone happy?
I'm fine with it.
I read through the red line and I think it does what we want it done. I'd make a motion to approve.
Sorry.
We do that.
Any public comment on the short-term rental?
And as a reminder for public comment, you have up to 3 minutes to speak. You can speak once, then please direct your comments to the mayor and the council.
Sam?
I just have a question. I'm very interested in the Be a Good Neighbor pamphlet.
Could we get your name
Oh,
and
sorry.
address, please?
Barbara Ingraham, 3970 Quick Road. The Be a Good Neighbor pamphlet, is that public or is that just given out to renters? I'm just wondering what the summary of that was.
The Be a Good Neighbor pamphlet, we had reviewed that at the last council meeting. It'll be public. It's just we're requiring renters to give it to their tenants, but it'll be public. Yeah.
So a summary of that, basically?
It's really just highlighting the renters and the tenants' obligations to follow certain nuisance ordinances, reminder that they live in a residential neighborhood or they're renting in a residential neighborhood and that they should act accordingly, essentially. So, and the contact information for city enforcement, city hall, things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Norm Van Wormer, I live at 670 Main Street with my wife and I. What is the purpose of shortening the period of time if you've had one citation in 5 years? And what would be the methodology to reobtain that license should you be cited for something that was unjust? Is it just rectifying the situation?
So I guess your first question is why are we shortening it from 21 to 14 days? The main reason is because if a violation happens and there's potentially continuing violations going on, this person can still operate their rental at an extended period of time. So we want to quicken the process for being able to determine if there is legitimate reason to suspend them, as opposed to, once you have 21 days to have a hearing, plus, we just felt at that time that it would be too long of a process. We want to shorten it so we have the ability to stop the violation as soon as possible.
And the ascertaining of something being in violation, who does that?
That is city staff, the police, and or the city enforcement. And then we go to the, if it's a suspension hearing, we go to the city clerk who holds a hearing. And then the clerk makes a determination based on the facts provided to him, whether it's a violation.
Any other public comment?
Paul Fairbairn, 2287 Vesta Road. Do you have a limit on how many licenses you give out in the city for, or is it unlimited?
No limits currently. That's something that the planning commission will eventually pick up, discuss whether or not they wanted the limits, but there are no limits.
Would that be something that should be done though, as far as in the short term, getting it so that there's not more and more rentals?
We're
Not that
handicapped right
I'm
now.
over it, it just seems like it's-
We're waiting for a state decision on whether municipalities can control short-term rentals, so we don't want to change it and then lose. If the state rule passes, then we lose all control, so it doesn't matter at that point.
Thank you.
Thank you. In the back.
Ann Phillips, 534 Westbrook Drive. I've read many articles in Harbor Light talking about the short-term rental. And they never tell us, and you didn't hear, what is a short-term rental? How many days?
Under 30 days,
What?
any rental under 30 days.
Under 30 days, but it's never mentioned in place whenever you, I never knew that.
Any other public comment on short-term rentals?
I just got one. In the Lefties, 515 Forest Way. I'm wondering what exactly, I'm new, short-term rentals are, like vacation people?
Yeah, VRBO or Airbnb, where
Oh.
you rent your home or a room in your
Okay.
house.
Thank you.
Anything under 30-day rental.
Okay.
Anyone else? We're good, we got them
On Zoom,
on Zoom, got one.
we'll go to Robin Johnson first. Robin, please unmute. Yep.
Thank you. Couple of questions and just. to
Robin, can you
clarify-
also state your,
Hi, Robin Johnson, 440 West Third Street.
Thank you.
And and just to clarify for that, for the person that just asked what a short-term rental is. And you might remember that Graham has been renting houses in Harbor Springs for years, excuse me, for years. So it's not just Airbnb and VRBO. There are rental companies in town that do short-term rentals, local companies. But back to the proposed changes. One of them is prohibiting parking in yards. Nobody wants to see that. However, my question is, can an owner occupant or perhaps somebody who has a 1-year lease park in their own front yard?
No,
So why do you need to put any kind of special wording in place? If people are not allowed to park in yards, why do you need to make a special rule for short-term rentals?
it's not special, it's reinforcement, but I can have Jeff Grimm, our zoning administrator.
Similar question, trash and recycling containers must be removed from public view by 7 p.m. Can full-time residents or long-term renters leave their trash bins in public view after 7 p.m. on the day to pick up?
Yes,
So what is the so if my neighbor leaves theirs out and another neighbor who has a renter in doesn't, why is that allowed? Why is there an issue that a full-time resident can or a full-time renter can and a short-term renter cannot? I'm just trying to understand why you're targeting one group of people.
We have warning labels, right?
If your renters leave on Saturday afternoon and put their trash out and it doesn't get picked up till Thursday, it's a problem. But if the trash goes out in the morning and gets picked up that day, it's not a problem.
So it cannot, so you're saying, okay, that doesn't really go with the wording. The wording says it has to be removed from public view by 7 o'clock on the day of pickup. So the issue is that they're putting it out, say on Saturday, and Little Traverse Disposal does not come until Tuesday. So it's there from Saturday to Tuesday if you don't live in town or you don't have a caretaker. So the issue is that it sounds like the bigger issue is that Saturday to Tuesday timeframe or Saturday to Thursday timeframe. Is that also an issue?
It has been, yes.
Okay, is that addressed in this also? And why is it an issue just for short-term renters and not for my neighbor who leaves on Sunday afternoon to go back to Chicago or Detroit and leaves theirs out for the until Tuesday?
Never complained.
Matt, would you like me to answer some of this?
Yeah, Jeff, if you want to take a response.
Hi, Robin. I'm Jeff Grimm. I do the zoning administration for the city. And
I
I've been
know you,
working.
Jeff Grimm. Hello.
I don't have a nameplate, so I'm just announcing. So we've worked on a number of these issues with the planning commission, and we had various meetings. We do, to answer a couple of questions, we do already have language in the short-term renter ordinance that does not permit them to put their garbage out prior to the morning of garbage day pickup. So we had that language. We just didn't have language saying when the empty containers needed to be removed from the street. To talk about the parking thing, a number of the things that we specify in our short-term renter ordinance are things that we have in our general code. We're just trying to compile some of these into one place so that when people are looking at the license or the application that they're filling out, it's all in one spot so that they can see these more specifically and better identify them. Some of the reasons that we have more specific language, such as the garbage, is for a regular property owner, they're there every day doing their normal thing. So it's less of an issue.
If they're taking out, if they're leaving Sunday afternoon to go back to wherever they live and they're just weekend, they're summer residents.
Mayor, if I may interject here, public comment section shouldn't be for a discussion back and forth between council and questions. I think the public comment
To
section.
me, if it's an issue for anyone, it should be for everyone. And I have no problem with this. Nobody wants to look at trash can. Nobody wants to look at blue bags. It should be for everybody, not just short-term rentals. As simple as that.
Right. Thank you.
All right, yeah, Molly.
Hi, I'm Molly Keegan. I own a house at 652 State Street, as well as a house out on Lakeshore Drive. And I am curious about the violations. How does one know of the violations, and what is the city's response? Do they go ticket the renters if they're still there when the violations are happening, or how does that work?
Depending on the nature of the complaint and who it's directed at, it would either be enforced by myself as the zoning administrator during the day or by the police department in the evening. And depending on the type of issue that's at hand, it would either be a violation fee to the property owner or a violation fee to the renter themselves.
Okay, so you do fine the renters who are doing the behavior.
Depending on the type of issue, I think we've talked about this in like a noise complaint. There could be a fine for that directly to the renter themselves. Most of the short-term rental ordinance is directed at complaints and fees that would be to the property owner.
And if with a noise complaint, if one person complains, is that validated by conferring with all the other neighbors? So that you reduce the chance of somebody who's just, unhappy and complaining.
Molly, we do have an enforcement process that's, quite involved, that the zoning administrator and the police department get involved in. If you want to learn more about that, I suggest coming to City Hall and discussing that with us. We do have protocols in place that we have for all our ordinances.
Thank you. And also, I agree with the previous comment that, we should be across the board. Ugly trash is unsightly regardless of what your status is. So I just wanted to add that I agree. Hear, hear.
Okay, Vance? Vance, this is your chance.
Hi, sorry about that. This is Vance Vandale. We have two properties in Harbor Springs, 440 and 450 Cottage Lane. And we're primarily summer residents. We're here most of the summer, 3 months, sometimes in the winter. I'm in Harbor right now, but we do occasionally rent our property. I agree with everything the last two people on Zoom said. We already have these regulations for every other resident. Why do you have to have different or additional for owners who rent their property? Like Robin mentioned, many people on my street are here part-time. They do put their trash out early because they're going home for the weekend or for the week, and then it does sit there. We have some when we're not here, take our trash out and bring it back in, so we don't have that issue. And I agree, nobody wants cars parking on front lawns, and nobody wants trash sitting out. We love Harbor Springs. We love, the atmosphere here. Nobody wants to change that, but why do you have to have? It's kind of like you're saying that people who rent their property are somehow more delinquent than people who don't rent their property, when it doesn't sound like you have evidence of that, given the number of problems you've indicated. So I just don't like that it's an assumption that people who rent their property are not following these rules and are not taking good care of their property, which I say is, from my experience, is not true at all. My other comment is the two people per bedroom is probably fine in most cases. I mean, we have one very large children's bedroom that has 2 bunk beds, which very comfortably accommodates 4 people. So we currently list our cottage as sleeping 10 because it does sleep 10 very comfortably. And why shouldn't we be able to do that? We've never had any issue. We have a very high-end rental. We charge a lot for our rental. We've never had any issues with our neighbors, no issues with sound. Why should we be penalized because maybe one person in what it sounds like one person in the last all-known history of renters has been suspended? So why do you need this change when you should leave it up to the owner to decide, to operate it well and fairly? And if there's an issue, that's when the city should come in and take action. I just don't understand why there's a need for any of these things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's all we have.
Okay. Discussion, a motion and a second. A roll call.
John, was that you, the second? Okay. Al Dyka.
Yes.
John Leo.
Yes.
Nancy Rondell.
Yes.
John Cops. Matt McGuire.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right. Here we are to talk about paid parking.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, in January, council reviewed some paid parking quotes and directed staff to bring back a more detailed plan. And I've attached a presentation. I'm going to go over it right now with you. And please, I'd ask council to please leave your comments till after the presentation. If you have questions, just ask me, but let's discuss it afterwards and after.
Could you speak up a little bit? There's so many people here that are interested in the topic. If you could speak up, thank you.
What's your name?
Kozlowski, Dale.
Thank you.
It's hard to hear you guys.
Okay, so why is city considering paid parking? There's a few reasons. One of them is to balance the city's general fund budget, counteract the negative effects of Headley and Proposal A on the city's budget, prevent cuts to the general fund services, operations, and amenities, refrain from dipping into our general fund reserve balance, building up the general fund reserve balance to save for eventual necessary and/or desirable projects, such as parking lots, roofs, building upgrades, the boardwalk, diversify our general fund revenue sources, and shift some of the costs of maintaining and improving our city to the visitors and the users. So what are the three ways to balance a budget? And we've kind of talked about this at council several times over the past year. The first one is to decrease expenditures. In December 2021, we proposed $120,000 in cuts. There were significant opposition to those cuts, so council did not move forward with those cuts. But even if we cut, there's only so much that can be cut. Eventually, we'll be dipping into cutting into our reserves, so we're having to raise revenue again if we don't want to cut our essential services. So cutting or trimming the fat only works for a little bit until we get into essentials. The other way to balance the budget is to utilize our reserves. So the city utilized about $120,000 in our historical reserve fund to prevent cuts this year. Our general fund reserve balance has about 8 months of reserves in it. Our city clerk recommends 9 to 12 months of reserves for 3 main reasons. The first is cash flow. We only receive tax revenue once per year. So you guys get 2 tax bills a year, but only one of those tax bills does the city actually see any money from it. The second reason is Headley Proposal A. If and when property values decrease, the city will need to dip into our reserves, because the way that works is that once the property values decrease, we're not allowed to raise our millage rate back up. So we have to dip in our reserves to basically uphold their budget. The third reason is bond ratings. The more money we have in savings, the better bond ratings and rates we will get when borrowing money. And for example, council, we have one project potentially coming up in the next couple of years related to the electrical substation that we would need to bond for. So the more money we have in our savings, the better bond rates and ratings we get. And finally, the third option to balance the budget is to increase our revenues. In November, city sought an override of Headley. The voters rejected that 66 to 34%. So then the city reviewed and discussed other revenue options. And so the major options that we discussed on November 15th to raise revenue were the following: annexation, and particularly we're looking at Weequahic and Harbor Point and other land surrounding the city of Harbor Springs, an income tax, sale of public resources and land, paid parking, special millages, Headley override, special assessments, and grants and donations. So are we pursuing those other options? So when it came to annexation, income tax, and sale of public resources, those were found to be either undesirable or would be difficult and lengthy to implement. We talked about a future special millage as well as another Headley override attempt, and we've talked about how that probably would be necessary in the future. And then special assessments and grants and donations will be and are being considered for specific projects and improvements. Well, I've had a lot of questions about a local sales tax and lodging and occupancy tax, and the state does not permit cities to collect a local sale tax, so we cannot collect a local sales tax on our level, and the state also does not allow cities of our size to collect a lodging or occupancy tax. So those two options, which would shift the cost of maintaining our city infrastructure and services to the visitors, they're just not available to us. So paid parking. I have 2 proposals for paid parking. One is based on a kiosk deployment, another is based on a permit system. So I'm going to go over the kiosk system first, and then I'll talk about proposal B, which is a permit system. So under this paid parking proposal, parkers would be able to pay via mobile app or at a pay station, a kiosk. Paid parking would be in effect from May through October. Alternatively, we've had suggestions of shortening that season to the summer months, which is June through September. It would be 7 days a week, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Some had suggested alternatively making it 6 days per week, so excluding Sundays, and making it from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. The city would enforce a 3-hour time limit in all paid parking zones. Handicap spaces would be free. calculated about 365 paid parking spaces. I used Google Maps and a walkthrough of downtown to calculate the number of spaces in our district or in our proposed paid parking district. It's really hard to tell with the snow on the ground right now and Google Maps with some blockages going on, but it's about 365 once you take away the handicap spaces. There would still be about 225 free spaces within a 5-minute walk from downtown. We're looking at about 18 kiosks for a moderate kiosk deployment and 25 kiosks for a heavy deployment. Overall, the city would only need to add 3 signposts. The existing 3-hour time limit signs would be replaced with new signs that say 3-hour limit, pay via mobile app or a kiosk. So this is the proposed paid parking zone. It's 3rd Street between Gardner and State, Main Street between State and Judd, and Bay Street between State Street and Gardner Street. Actually goes a little bit to this alleyway here you see on the left side of your screen. Also, State Street, Gardner Street, and Spring Street south of 3rd Street would be paid parking, as well as the Harbor Master Marina parking lot and the Spring Street lot, as well as the 3rd Street and State lot. Free parking areas near downtown is kind of hard to see here, but in the purple, you have most of West 3rd Street, West Main Street, Bay Street along the beach, and Traverse Street between Main Street going down toward Harbor Point. We also have in the northeast section of town, 3rd Street between Gardner and Judd, as well as the Methodist Church parking lot, which is a shared parking lot between the church and the public. And currently that agreement has that the church lot is there's no public parking allowed at that lot on Sundays before noon and no overnight parking, and that agreement would still be enforced. So kiosk locations, there's 2 different symbols here. The check marks are where we're proposing the most ideal locations for the kiosks. So if there's 18 kiosks, those check marks represent those 18 kiosks. The red is the optional kiosks. So revenue and expenses. The revenue depends on the total number of paid parking days and hours in the year. We'll assume 6 months, 7 days, 12 weeks, 7 days per week, 12 hours per day. That's how I'm assuming these calculations. If council wants to change the number of days and hours, this would affect that. But at a 20% occupancy rate, meaning that 20% of those 365 spots are occupied during the day for those 6 months, you would see a minimum of $158,000 in revenue. At 40% occupancy, $315,000 and so forth to 80% occupancy, which is $630,000. Additionally, we would see revenue from parking tickets, but at this point, we'll assume that revenue from parking tickets will be the same because we're not enforcing parking to make revenue. We're enforcing parking to ensure people are following the ordinances. Expenses. So kiosk installation costs for 18 is a rough estimate about between $170,000 and $180,000. For 25, I think it was about $240,000 to $250,000. Annual costs would be about $10,000 for 18 kiosks, $13,500 for 25. There are no upfront system costs for the passport system. There are reoccurring costs though. There's 22.7% plus 25% payment processing transaction fee that the city would incur. And there's also a 25-cent convenience fee per transaction. That was proposal A. Proposal B is the permit system. So the permit system would be in conjunction with a mobile app payment. In-town property owners would be allowed 2 free annual permits per property. They could purchase unlimited additional permits at $150 per permit. Non-residents, whether they live in the townships or from wherever, could purchase annual permits for $150. Permits would be associated with a license plate. There would actually be no physical permits or tags or stickers. You give the city your license plate number. We put it in our parking permit software system. And then police have electronic monitoring app that would be able to let them know if someone who has parked is a permit holder or has been paid by mobile app. Same effective dates apply as in proposal A, same time, same hour limits. This is really up to council and the city to decide. You can make it as long as you want, as short as you want. Same paid and free parking spaces, either no kiosks, but I think I would recommend at least a few in some of the parking lots because people will be visiting who don't want to pay via app or by credit card, and they would want to, at least have ability to pay by coin. So in some of our lots, like the Harbor Master lot, I would recommend having a couple kiosks. And the same number of signs as proposal A. Again, comparing the revenue and expenses, it's more difficult to estimate revenues for this because it's not really a system that's in place anywhere, at least that I could find. But the below calculations assume the same number of days and hours as proposal A. So if you sold 500 annual permits, that would be $75,000. 1,000 sold, $150,000. 1,500 sold, $225,000. For mobile app hourly payments, I made the calculation based on 1/3 of parkers choosing to pay via the app. I'm making an assumption that, just an even assumption, this could be totally wrong, that 1/3 would be paying by app, 1/3 would be free permits, and 1/3 would have annual permits, but those numbers could change. At 20% occupancy, $52,000, and you see as you go forward to 80% occupancy, $208,000. So at minimum, a very conservative estimate would be about $127,000 in revenue. A maximum, a very high optimistic revenue still would be $433,000. Expenses for the kiosks, upfront costs between $0 and $50,000. Kiosk annual cost for 5 would be about $2,700. Excuse me. No upfront cost with Passport again. There would be a $10,000 annual recurring cost for the permit system for Passport, plus $5,000 to cover the $2 convenience fee to the residents for their annual permits. Again, we could, work with those numbers. You put up a higher convenience fee, and you put that to the customer, the resident, that convenience fee, then that eliminates some of that recurring cost. But I would recommend that $10,000 for the permit system and keep a $2 convenience fee. Makes sense. A $4 convenience fee for non-resident annual permit holders. Again, a payment processing transaction fee and a 25-cent convenience fee per transaction that the customer has to pay. So looking at the advantages of proposal A versus proposal B. Proposal A, it's easier for police to monitor the 3-hour time limit that we currently are monitoring. It's more convenient for visitors who want to pay with coins or by card instead of using the mobile app, and there's potential for more revenue. I think proposal B has many more advantages. It preserves the city's aesthetics by not putting up kiosks on Main Street, 3rd Street, and Bay Street. Doesn't add clutter to the sidewalks. It reduces the financial burden on taxpayers who are already paying to maintain our infrastructure, and they won't need to pay to park downtown. Annual permits make parking for in-town and township residents much more convenient. They don't have to bother with app or coins. For each parking session, they just have to apply for a permit each year, and there's less upfront costs. So I think proposal B is definitely the way to go if council wants to pursue paid parking. Of course, questions council would have to consider is hours. Last time council suggested 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. You can alter those hours, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's really up to what council wants to do on that one. Currently, council's looking at 7 days a week, but we could push that to 6 days a week, make Sundays free. 6 months, I'd still recommend going with 6 months because we don't really have any kind of parking issues, but council could go annual if they wanted. Permit holders would still be able to park with their permits downtown, so it's convenient for them. And kiosks and select lots, like I said earlier, I would recommend at least having a couple kiosks in some of the parking lots so people could pay via coin. So over the course of the last few weeks, I've received a lot of questions about going back to a potential millage or a Headley, and that those are perfectly viable options. We talked about a special millage, a public safety special millage has been brought up, and the police department is approximately 30% of our general fund budget, just a little shy of 30%. And a lot of residents are extremely satisfied based on our public surveys with our police presence and our the service we get from our police, so that could be one option. We've talked about parks, buildings and grounds, millage, and we've also talked about a potential brush, refuse and recycling special millage. It's important to know that Headley will eventually affect all millages, so we have to continually go back to the residents for a vote to make sure we keep that millage at a number that's going to sustain the operations and services. A special millage rate of 1 mil or less probably means the city won't have to reduce or eliminate services for the next few years, could be 5 to 7. But it won't enable the city to save up a lot of money for some major general fund infrastructure projects. For example, the cost of our boardwalk repairs at this time are estimated to be $700,000. If we had a project of that size, it'd probably take us about 6 to 7 years based on 1 mil to raise that money for such a project. The other option is to go back to Headley. And there's still some, I guess, confusion and I guess questions about Headley and Proposal A and how it affects the city's ability to balance its budget. As a recap, as expenses increase, the city cannot increase its millage rate to cover those costs. If and when property values decrease, the city cannot increase its millage rate to cover the cost of those services. And transfers of ownership do not add significant taxable value to the city's overall tax rate, which is something that's really hard to grasp. But once, according to Headley and Proposal A, if a new building goes up or someone sells their house, that's been living in their house for 30 years, yes, that new person who moves into that new house will have to pay a lot more taxes, but it has the effect of lowering taxes for everybody else. So the overall tax rate gets lowered when we have transfers of ownership. So as someone's house has increased in taxable value, everyone else's rate goes down a little bit. So that's the effect Headley and Proposal A has. It's a short history of, we've shown this graph before about the effect of the millage reduction fraction. So between 1991 and 2016, the city had been was able to levy up to 9 mills. As you can see, for those 30 years, we were levying between 5.8 and 8 mills. Most of the time we were under 6 or between 6 and 7 during the 90s. Headley has gradually decreased that maximum authorized millage rate from 9 in 1991 to about 5.7 today. So the city does not have the flexibility to increase the millage rate unless the voters approve an override. The Headley ballot language, the city had asked voters to uncap the maximum authorized millage rate to the city charter authorized 15 mills. Additionally, the city was not able to raise the millage rate more than 0.5 mills annually for 20 years, and only if necessary. The common criticisms we received were that 20 years was too long and 15 mills was too high, and that the ask was too broad, meaning that people would be more likely to approve something if it was for a specific millage. One thing to remember is that 20 years was meant to protect the voters. Once that authorized operating millage is uncapped, it remains uncapped. So the 20 years really was there to say that the council could not raise the annual millage rate by more than 0.5 mills per year for 20 years. So the city could propose another Headley ballot proposal with different language. To account for some of the criticisms, we could uncap the maximum millage rate to 8 mills and limit the city to not raising the millage rate for more than 0.5 mills annually for 5 years. I still think it's important for voters to understand that the maximum millage rate will not decrease back to today's millage rate after 5 years, once Headley is uncapped. It will start at 8 mills. The city will not go back to today's rate. So after 5 years, we're starting back at 8 mills. So I think that's very important for voters to understand that the 5 years is not really going to affect whether or not what their millage rate is going to be. It will be, once you uncap to 8, it will be 8 or whatever number you uncap to. So this is really a discussion on paid parking, but I threw in some Headley and special millage language there because there's been a lot of questions about it, both from the public and from council members. At this point, I'd hand it over to you to see if you want to get public comment first and then have a discussion.
Public comment first.
Yeah.
Start with those, and now I'm gonna, council, if you want me to put a timer up for this one?
Yes.
If you want to start in the room first, so we go to Zoom.
Sure.
Who wants to start? There you go, Mr. James.
Jeff James, Birch Court on Second Street, 3 minutes, wow. This is the biggest thing that Harbor Springs has tackled in a long time. But what we're talking about, paid parking, kiosks, ugly signs versus saving the beauty and simplicity of the city we love the most. There is no emergency. The sky is not falling. For Ron McCray, at one point, the city had $800,000 left in its reserve balance during the Dave Irish's mayor era. The city fought its way back. We are nowhere near there today, yet acting like we're desperate. We all need to slow down. I was very excited to read 2 editorials in the 22 Harbor Light. 2 city council members are quoted as saying, "We listen to the voters," and the other said, "I listened to the voters that elected me." If that's truly the case, and we can take you at your printed word, and you really mean what you said, then this paid parking idea is now dead. It's over. Put a fork in it. We need to move on, think of alternatives, including decreases in spending. There were 16,000 signatures on change.org. You please need to listen to these people. Exactly like Bay Bluff's millage request, also on the November 21 ballot, where they asked for a $0.25 mill for a specific purpose and a specific time frame. It passed. We were given a bad ballot question in November with no specifics as to what it was for. Just the city needed more revenue to do Headley for 20 years. Crazy. If I remember correctly, there's $126,500 in the budget for lawsuits. That won't go on forever. So we'll get back to the old budget amount of about $50,000. So that adds $75,000. When was the last time, if ever, Harbor Springs had 4 lawsuits? I don't know that ever happening. There's all the DDA that I'm not going to go through those. Actually, yes, I will. According to Michigan.gov, we're leaving $116,000 on the table by not applying for some funds through what's called constitutors revenue sharing payments. I agree that the issue of paid parking has been discussed for years. It was a bad idea then. It's a bad idea now. City of Petoskey, if you go to your financials on the 22 budget, they make $200,000 a year. You think we're going to make that much? It just doesn't hold water. Lastly, I'd like to thank the person who wrote the editorial that states claiming how long a person has lived in Harbor Springs is arrogant. What a perfect segue. You just don't get it. This is about pride and history, what this city has become, the deep roots it has to make Harbor Springs what it is today. First, I'm very proud of that heritage. No, not arrogance, but 100% pride in this very special place we get to call home. Just another reason why this idea is such a hot topic. People are saying we like Harbor Springs the way it is. Again, thank you for pointing that out. I hope you'll enjoy and understand that feeling of pride someday. I have a list of 3 people. That one guy raised $1.5 million, bought the Hoover Flower Shop, gave it to the city, actually gave it to the school. Larry, we raised $4.5 million. It was strictly for the town. Last paragraph, please let me go.
No, that's it, Jeff.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Lisa Moscow Watson. I live in the city of Harbor, 450 State Street. I've been here for 36 years. We also have to speak louder. We can't hear you. Okay. Well, I'm mimicking Victor over here. We spoke to the, to the board and not to us, the audience.
Excuse me.
So we could hear
Lisa,
barely.
You need to address the council, not the crowd.
Correct, but I'm making my point that we couldn't hear him at all because he wasn't addressing us. Okay, here we go. I have a petition here. I tried to find one, couldn't find one, came to the office, couldn't get one. You don't have any petitions for anything. And so made one up. I have 1,654 signatures on this petition that are against the kiosk and they are all registered voters and against meters here. We also have another home in Goodhart. My husband's been here 71 years. So we have been here a long time. We want to keep things the way they are. If we wanted it different, we'd be in Birmingham or Bloomfield, Grosse Point. We don't want that. We want Harbor Springs. I'm going to submit this because it's got all the names on it. Who do I give this to? I'd like to know. Is it Victor or is it over there?
One of the 2.
Okay, so I'll go over here. Yes, that over. It is there. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you. Applause until the end of this, just to expedite things. There are a lot of people who want to talk. Yes, ma'am.
Carrie Levy, 723 Greenway Drive, Birchwood. I'm not a business owner here, but we know and we're very well acquainted with the issues that business owners have retaining employees, paying them. And I'm asking, where are they going to park? And will it cost them or the business owners more for this parking?
That's where they park. If they park in the central business district, they'll have to pay just like everybody else. And
So you're adding to the issues that we already have in Harbor. There are signs in small business windows, all of them. Help wanted. To me, this is just adding to the burden.
maybe, maybe not.
That's your answer?
That's my answer. Thank you.
Okay.
My name is Janet Stewart. I have a house at 410 Pine Street. I have been up here all my life. I don't want to say, but it's 70 plus years. And when I first heard the proposal for parking meters, I didn't want it. I'm like everyone else. I love this place the way it's always been. However, on a normal city council meeting, there are probably 12, maybe 20 people here. And there have been a lot of meetings this fall, and people don't show up. I personally feel, having read the, sorry, I really want to, having read some of the letters in the paper, talking about the amount of communication or lack thereof, the ability of residents to know what's going on. I think it's becoming, it would be in the best interest of everyone who's here now to come more regularly. And the bottom line is, there have been a lot of, I think, very negative comments about the council and what they're trying to do with the revenue. And if you look, if I can get my sister to speak, she's got figures too. But if you look at where the budgets have been in the last 5 years and the shortfalls, expenses to revenue, and what the city council has had to do to balance the budget, I would ask everyone who signed that 1,654 petition to then come up with suggestions other than the fact that pointing kind of to commission that you're not doing your job and that you're not budgeting efficiently and that you should be able to cut the costs. I do believe that when, the proposal came out on Headley, it wasn't done in a very clear method. I was one of those people who thought that if you build a multi-million-dollar house on Bay Street or Beach Drive, that all of a sudden the city had a lot more revenue, until I really looked into Headley and Proposal A. And I think the city does have an issue. And I think the city council is doing their best to try to figure out how to get more revenue. But if anybody has some great ideas other than really just bashing city council, I would ask them to present them. Thank you.
My question would be, me again, where would, like when we have the market on Saturdays, where's all these buildings and people gonna park? Where are we putting all these meters and stuff? And July 4th, that's my confusion.
They'll park same place they've been parking now, except they'll have to pay for it if they're in the central business district.
Okay, that's all I wondered. I forgot earlier.
I'm Karen Shrub Donnelly, 644 Ann Street. I've lived here for over 30 years full time. My three kids went to high school here, graduated from high school here. We've been very involved in the community. What I want to talk about is stability. I am so astounded at some of the comments that have come across, directed so personally to individuals who are representing all of us or running the city or even accosting other members of our town. And that hasn't really proved to be productive at all. I mean, it's really clear to me by reading the 50 letters that Victor provided as part of the packet that hardly anybody is excited about paid parking. So that being said, Victor laid out all the other alternatives. I know we as a small group proposed a millage vote, to be, raise enough money for that $120,000 we almost lost for beachfront lifeguards and for the rubbish and debris pickup and so on. And I heard somebody say, what do you mean $120,000? Just as you said, if you had come to the city meetings, you would know this. The budgets are all there, right there on the website. They're all available to everybody to read. So any questions can be answered. And Victor did a great job providing answers to questions people have had. So it's not an easy thing to resolve tonight. But what I would propose is perhaps, and I don't know if this has been done before, but an ad hoc committee comprised of various citizens from the community that maybe can sit down and try to hash out these different alternatives other than just paid parking, whether it be the millage or the Headley override vote again, or whether it be, what do we have real estate we can sell, whatever it might be. I just propose maybe that would be a way to hash it out because I don't think it can be easily done today. That's my opinion. And I've got a minute left. Anybody want to?
Okay. Young lady?
I'm Mary Lou Huffman Dawson, and I live at 7765 Hoyt Road. The city property butts against my property. Little Traverse Township on my left and West Traverse Township on my right. And I've been a native of Harbor Springs since day one. And I'm just afraid all this is going on, that it's going to destroy the little charming town that we live in. And that something has to be done. And I'm curious about these parking meters. Are they going to probably use Holy Childhood parking lot? And then all the Tarvey and all that will be ruined? They can't put any meters on our parking lot. So I think it's a no-no. And especially, there's only probably one, maybe three people here that are originals from Harbor Springs. And they should do something. Maybe we should get some more pamphlets out, get more signatures, right? To keep it from going. And I've lived here all my life and I've never put a dime or a nickel in the parking meters in Petoskey. I park where there's a free parking place and I walk, and the exercise is good for you.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Miranda Miller, 651 Second Street, and I reiterate everything that Jeff says. I stand behind, so I'm finishing up the last paragraph that he has directed to City Council. So I hope that when you vote, I hope that's not I hope that when you vote, you're thinking about this, what this could do to Harbor Springs long-term, which is change it forever. The five of you on City Council have a chance to let people vote on a specific millage proposal, or we have the right to vote, or possibly ruin what is so special about our town. Although the choice seems very easy to me, it is up to you. Please listen to the over 1,600 people that signed the petition, plus the many letters City Hall and you have received. We are offering a win-win option, plus many other ideas, and it should be tried before spending plus or minus $200,000 or considering any form of paid parking. Let's find the money. It is here. We know it is, and even personally, I feel just a a millage might just be kicking this down the road. There is money here somewhere and there's other options here. Also, city manager's recommendation of proposal B, once kiosks start, the likelihood that they will not continue seasonally until our town is probably, we will end up with full paid parking. I cannot see how we would just start and then not end up continuing the process all the way through. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Joe O'Brien, 4985 Russell Road. Get into the pot, little frog. We'll turn up the heat ever so slowly. Metered peak parking a few months a year only. Maybe only a few streets. Other cities like Midland and Petoskey and Grand Rapids have paid parking too. And if you're lucky, we'll let you even park free on Thursdays. But we will not go into the pot because the pot of water we know is hot and it will get hotter. And we know the three things that you know too. Number one, managing paid parking takes more money. Number two, charging a toll to visit an economically fragile downtown like Harbor Springs is about as smart as putting a paywall on the Chamber of Commerce website. Number three, and most important of all, Harbor Springs has so many timeless reasons to linger. But when you toll my car, you toll my time. And when I'm up against time, it changes the personality of this city. The mantra in this town, if this went forward, would be something that sounds just like this. Do you know what time it is? I need to feed the meter. You have our attention. You have our attention. And when we didn't vote for Headley, we got your attention. We didn't know what it was. But we're all frogs in this right now. And we, frankly, everyone that I have spoken to, and it's a lot of folk, have spoken to me about paying for a fraction of a penny to make it certain that there would be no paid parking anywhere in town. Most everyone I have spoken to, whether you agree or not, I can assure you, they will go forward for it. But let's be clear about the for what that money is about. This has brought an ill wind to Harbor Springs. Please shelve this.
Wow.
Save the applause. I know that was a very well thought out speech.
Here's two here.
Really.
I'm Julie Bacon. I live at 255 East Main Street, right over Sotheby's Real Estate. I've lived there since 1986. And you said you didn't understand the Headley Amendment, and I didn't either, but I voted for it. And I voted for it because I trust the city. I trust our city. These people are not going to take your millions of dollars and run away. They're not. They're here, everyone who's in this room is here because we love Harbor Springs, right? We may have different opinions about things, but we're not here because we have to be here. That old saying, you the bay have to pay, right? We are here because we love the city. And I trust the people in this room to do the right thing with my tax dollars. I didn't know what the hell I was voting for, but I voted for it because cities need money. We want services. And if we want services, cities need money to give us services. That's all I have to say. And I vote for the next tax increase if there is.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ward Wallstrom, isn't it back? I just wanted to do the math. I didn't hear what the shortfall, projected shortfall, is for the next 4 or 5 years. So it's just a question.
There isn't a shortfall. We're trying to build our coffers up and to be able to pay for fixing the boardwalk.
So there was a shortfall of $120,000, and that's probably going to stay the same or increase. $120,000. How much? $120,000 is the shortfall. That's what it was for this year. Well, okay, that's good to know.
You have a phone here?
Carol Winnard at 141 Snyder Street. I'm Janet's sister. I also voted for the Headley override.
Did you understand it?
Yes, I did.
Good for you.
But I'd also, just to reiterate what Janet said, you know, I've started since I moved up here attending all the city council meetings. And I've learned a tremendous amount. And I would really encourage everyone to do that. I was here in December when the city council considered cutting all of the lifeguards to save, I think it was 50 or 60, 70,000 there. The trash pickup people were outraged by the idea that the city beach would no longer have lifeguards. And that's why they went back to Victor to come up with different revenue ideas. I would also encourage people to look at the financials. They're online. And the city was in a deficit in 2018, 19, 20, and then 21, except for the fact that they moved the money from the historical museum to the general fund. That's not sustainable. And in my opinion, I don't want paid parking either, but if people aren't gonna vote for the Headley override that has really created tremendous problems for cities all across the state, then you have to find other revenues. And this is one of the revenues because we're running anywhere between 72 and 300,000 a year in shortfalls. And so I don't know where else people expect they're going to be able to find the money. They found the money this time by moving it from the historical museum reserve, but that is not sustainable.
Thank you. How about you in the back?
Good afternoon, Keith Newberry, 2565 Pennsylvania, just outside at West Weekly. Our community and this whole area relies on a vibrant Harbor Springs. And those of us may remember from the 50s and 60s where the downtown area wasn't quite vibrant and we didn't have full storefront utilization. Actually, a little bit before my time, but I do remember some of that. So as we make this decision or this recommendation, I think about the impact on our small business community. What's going to attract people to shop and come and spend money, whether it's people who live here or resorters. There are so many other choices to take our dining options, our shopping options out of Harbor Springs. And the pandemic has taught us that. They taught us how to shop online, how to use Amazon. So everything that we do to reduce the convenience of shopping and visiting and enjoying our wonderful downtown needs to be taken into consideration that could affect small business. I do agree we got a parking challenge in Harbor Springs. We have a parking challenge for employees of small businesses in the area. So other thing is, maybe there's a lot of ideas in this room. There are other opportunities to raise revenue. Just today, I came up with a proposal of $12,000 that we're not collecting because of some of our practices. Maybe it's more, but there might be ideas in this room for people to generate additional revenue outside of parking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maggie Lacey, 315 East 3rd Street. We're talking about the Headley, we're talking about finances. One thing that I would like to maybe for all of us to think about, and one of the reasons for me that I really want to have more diligence about our finances is that there's what's called the Michigan Community Financial Board. And the financial board is, you have access to monthly information that goes into the general fund, the pension fund, and you can drill down to very specifics of your town. Michigan, Harbor Springs does not participate. But if you look at Sheboygan, Petoskey, Wayne City, I can drill down into specifics of their budget. And by participating in this, the state of Michigan will actually give us additional funds for doing this. And the financial dashboard is to protect the citizens of Harbor Springs to make sure we don't get into the situation where we're trying to dig for information. So I would suggest maybe that we can actually get a baseline of doing this program. It's been out there since 2011, and we have not been participating in this very easy monthly thing that we can do to get additional funds. So I would say to do this first. And part of that is to make sure that our F-65 audit, monthly audit is submitted on time for those funds to be given to us. And we have been somewhat delinquent in a couple of months. So I would say we should start there at the very beginning, and then I'm happy to look at other things to participate with. But this is, you know, free money that we're leaving on the table that we should, as citizens, have access to.
Is estimated to be $160,000.
Oh, yeah, $116,000 in additional funds on top of that. Every quarter, if you do this, there's additional quarterly amount of money. And you can go online and look at this. Like I said, Lansing's participating, Boyne City's participating, Sheboygan's participating. It'll tell you where you are in percentile of, let's see, physical health. You know, Sheboygan's 95th out of 269. So it gives you very specific information of exactly where our health of our budget is, and we should have access to that.
Thank you.
And in the back.
Hi, I'm Reverend Susan Hitz, and you can find me at 343 East Main Street, the United Methodist Church. I'm the pastor there. I would like to speak specifically about parking related to Sundays. You heard Victor speak about the Methodist parking lot. We had a great collaboration in 2019 that resulted in beneficial parking for both the city and for the church on the church property. And it was really wonderful to work with the city. My scope, my concern is Sunday mornings. Sunday morning parking during the time frame that you're considering parking, it will be too large for our little parking lot that is available on Sunday mornings. We go out into the street. So here's my concern. We have 4 churches in the area at that time on Sunday mornings that are being communities of faith surrounded by this parking area. And I think that if we're doing what we're called to do as communities of faith, we are reaching out to people that may have handicaps to walk to those parking meters, may have financial problems to pay for those parking meters, may not be so tech savvy for those parking meters. And I want us to remember those people as well. As you're considering this, when you looked at whether it was a 6 or 7 day program, I really don't have anything to say about the other 6 days, but Sunday I will say, yeah, you know what I preach. So Sundays, I will say I'm out there a lot. And the revenue that you're gonna gain, especially Sunday mornings, will be minimal and will be our worshipers. The only days that we have a parking congestion problem on those days are certain weekends that are the big weekends for the whole community. So we, as a faith community, I will say, have been pretty vibrant, all of the churches in this downtown. And we do one thing, we try to bring hope to people. And I would hate to have parking cost or accessibility be that one barrier that stops people from reaching out for hope, especially at this time. So if you would please consider Sundays, I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
David Kuckelman, 545 State Street, Harbor Springs. I'm concerned about 7 days a week, not just Sunday. Do you realize how many nonprofits we have in the downtown area? And one in particular is the theater. So what you're doing, any parking fees that you charge is a tax, whether you want to call it a tax or not. It is a tax because it's levied by a taxing agency and it is paid by the people. The theater, normally people get there 20 to 30 minutes before and the show lasts 2 to 2.5 hours. You're adding $3 to the cost of every ticket that we sell at the theater. And the theater is not the only one. You've also put the kiosks in front of the Historical Society. You put them where Festival of the Book across from New York. You have all of the churches are all nonprofits, all the way down to St. John's Episcopal on 3rd Street. So all of these people, it's not just Sunday, it's every day of the week. that if they are there. So if we're talking about using public parking and putting kiosks in, we should put kiosks here, outside here, and have people pay here. Because that's the idea that's permanent in the city lots over there where the businesses, where the nonprofits are. So just for your consideration.
I'm Margaret Tweeten. I've been a resident outside of the city limits for 40 years. I have a business in downtown, 27 years, very successful business. And yes, there are parking issues. Sometimes I have someone else's employee park there all day. I understand economics. I'm a business person. So I understand the city's need to get some extra money. But to me right now, this is shoving it down our throats, this parking thing. I think it needs to be thought out better. And there's got to be some other options. And I think that if you push this through and make this happen, you're going to have a lot of unhappy people. Instead, I offer that you put out some ideas, ask some other people, some other ways to get some money. Be creative. This is my mantra about my whole life, being creative. It's got to be a little more creative than just say, we're gonna put the parking meters in. It'll be this much money. There's other ways to make the money. That's all I have to say.
I'm Polish. Which means this becomes a practical question. I voted for Headley too, because I took the time to talk to people who knew what it's about, and I could understand it and know why I voted for it. If you didn't do that and you voted no, that's on you. But this is personal. If I'm going to pay for parking, and I'm talking to Ron McRae and Dave Johnson and Dave Slefkin and a bunch of other guys, what do I get? If I pay for parking, could I come down on Main Street and park in front of the theater if I want to go there? Nope. And can I come down and park in front of Turkey's and go in for coffee if I want to do that? Nope. What do I get for it? Nothing. It's a tax. Pure and simple. You can't polish it. That's what it is. I understand our problem, but I agree with some other people here. There's got to be some more people put their heads together and come up with some ideas. If you are against this, then you come up with some ideas that are going to help us get out of it. Put a little skin in the game. If you think your city's that important, then put a little skin in the game and help solve the problem. And I think we can do that, because the bottom line is, if you can't pay for it, you can't have it. It's that simple. So we just need to find revenue someplace else. Are we spending money on things maybe we shouldn't be spending money on because things are so tight? Maybe there's some other things we can do. There's got to be some other ideas out there, but as with the Headley, I trust the people that I voted for sitting on this council to do what's best for my city. 100%. I'll ask questions, but I won't go against their judgment. So that's my minute and 50 seconds.
Nancy McEnroe, 5770 Trillium Trail. Two things. One, I have to piggyback on Sherry Levy's comment regarding employees of Harbor Springs. If you do a conservative estimate, let's just say somebody works, they're at the pier, they work, for $15, $20 an hour. If they have to pay for parking for 40 hours in a week, that's approximately $2,500 that they will have to, I'm sorry, about $2,000, but that means that employee has to make about $2,500 to actually pay that back to the city. So yeah. I really think that we need to think about our already short-staffed businesses and how that's a huge impact on the employee and a very big hardship. Some drive from Melanson, some drive from Indian River, some drive from everywhere. So they're already incurring gas costs, excuse me, et cetera, maintenance on their car, that sort of thing. And then my second comment would be, how will you kind of use all of our comments for your vote. Will you actually, is there a procedure? Because I feel a little, I take umbrage with some of the kind of flippant nature of the council right now, and I'm not bashing
Yes.
anybody, but I guess I just feel like you're just going, yeah, well, so what? So what if they have to pay for parking? So what? And I really take umbrage with that. So I'd like to know what the procedure is with our comments.
We listen to you and then we make a decision on what we feel is best for the city.
Why are you laughing?
Why are they?
We are, don't count it.
Is it going to be put up to a vote in the city?
Pardon?
Will it be put up to a vote?
No.
You guys are going to be the ones to decide? Forget it. Your people that come in here from out of town and want to change our charming little town.
Excuse me, ma'am, you used
And
your
then-
time up already.
And then
Thank you.
change it.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to thank the Council of Birmingham, 3970 Pike Road, and the wisdom that has been in the room. I just have a question. I know that grant writing can be bothersome and cumbersome, but how often, and maybe you don't know the answer to this question, how often has Harbor Springs Council submitted grants and have they been awarded? That's all my question I have.
So we submit for grants pretty, I don't know, a couple a year, I would say, and typically get turned down for them because we're such an affluent community.
Well, I want you to add to that a little bit with what we're doing with the.
We did just.
We can't hear you. Couldn't hear your response.
So we did just apply for a grant for the boardwalk with the EDA. It's a US agency, Department of Commerce. That's a grant, 80% grant, about $500,000. We frequently talk to granting agencies, and they usually laugh at us when we tell them we're from Harbor Springs because they know we're an affluent area and they just assume, why are you guys coming for money? So we'd automatically get knocked down points because of the area we're in. Doesn't mean it's impossible. We have received grants before, and we've received mostly small grants. I mean, $2,000 grant to plant trees. We did receive a grant for the Harbor Master Building that we ultimately rejected because of the terms on that grant. But yeah, we do apply for grants, but we have to be calculating and use our time wisely applying for grants, because you don't want to waste your time knowing if you're going to get rejected for a grant.
So I still have 2 minutes. So it sounds like you could use some volunteer help to put the work effort into writing grants. Because I know there's a lot out there that haven't been tapped into, so that would be a great way if someone is a good writer to maybe help the council out. So thank you.
I don't think I used all 3 minutes. This is just quick. I understand.
Jan,
Sir,
you
I'm
can only
sorry.
go
No,
once,
what else?
You can only go once. All right. Back in the corner.
Ben Fowler, 3202 Peace Run, Harbor Springs. Question for specifically for Victor. Based on your kiosks, I think one of them was 18 and another one maybe up to 25. On average, what's the cost of the kiosk per unit? The cost of just purchasing?
So the brand we're looking at, the Luke Cosmo, they are approximately $9,500. Am I right about that, Tom? Yeah, about $9,500 per unit.
$9,500 per unit, okay? Maybe 20 units. $250,000 by the time we put them in. We're $250,000 into it before we started getting money out of it.
Right.
Is there a better way to spend our money? There's a big investment to try to get another $250,000 back. You need to think about that. I mean, I know you have, but, and I know it's hard, where are you gonna find the money? I don't know. I don't think paid parking is it. My grandfather was mayor of this town back in the 50s. He'd be disgusted just by the thought, and a lot of people here are disgusted by the thought. I know you're in a hard position. I get it. But I think we've got to find another way out of it. I mean, I don't think paid parking is what we're looking for. Other towns, nobody likes it there. And I guarantee you, nobody's gonna like it here. And a little congestion, traffic congestion. Okay, mom and pa come downtown, okay, well, you know what, drop her off to go into her, get her prescription or whatever. Well, he drives around the block, round and round and round, more traffic congestion. You know, it's just gonna be a mess. I can promise you that. Nothing good will come of it, except the money they bring in after a $250,000 outlay. So if you bring in $250,000 in revenue, that just pays off, you know, plus you have operating expense on and all that. So I mean, you gotta think about it, and I know you are, but it's a big nut. So you know, some thought. Thank you.
Hello, council. Bill Mulder, 372 West Summit. Oh, don't leave now. And, okay, watch running.
Bill. Hey, Bill.
Yes, I know. Council, I want to thank you for serving. This has got to be as tough as it gets. And, you know, we have a financial problem, and I commend you for looking at all alternatives. So I haven't heard any one of you say that we're going to do this parking thing. So all the anger and frustration I'm feeling in the room, I'm not quite seeing why it's directed at you. It's just a proposal, right? One of several options we have. And the anger and the emotion and all the frustration, we're going to have to raise some revenue somewhere. So we should cut some expenses where we can. We should look for grants. We'll do all those things. But it's probably going to come down to a millage where the Harbor Springs voters are going to have to pay for this. So it's probably like a 1 mil millage or another heavy override. So for all the people who signed the petition, all the people so angry, get ready to put out a yard sign in favor of a millage proposal. We better feel the same passion, the same energy, and we're going to say, damn, we did it. We didn't have to get paid parking, but we did have to pay an extra mil. So are you ready to support that? To write letters to the paper, to make it happen, if that's what it comes to? These guys are going to have to decide. They're going to make the best decision they can, but it's probably going to come down to us paying more so other people can park in our town. So are you ready for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'll look for your letters to the paper and I'll look for your yard sign.
You'll see my section.
All right.
Ready?
Are we voting?
6 months ago, this household was exploring buying 1, 2, and 3 Beach Drive, $5.3 million. We're hoping to get 50% of the money from the state, but where are you gonna come up with the other $2.5 million? And now, we've gone from spending $2.5 million to now we're in such danger, we have to buy parking meters and make a couple $100,000 a year. I don't find you fiscally responsible. Unlike the lovely lady in the front yard, I don't trust you. This doesn't make any sense. You can't even cover your shortfall within the next 3 years. Doesn't make any sense.
Well said.
So that other $2.5 million was come from donations. We never planned on spending any city funds for that.
Yes.
Yes.
But did you have anyone lined up for the donations? And
No,
then when
it didn't go through.
When Weekly Wisconsin said, why would we want a city park in our area? And they voted you down, someone foolishly said, well, we'll have to remember that. And then that's called fighting the hand that feeds you.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else? Stand in the parade.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Adrian. I live at 2685 Washington Road. I'm 6 miles out of the city, but I do own a business downtown, Harbor Ice Cream and soup and sandwiches.
Yes.
I think this would be a great deterrent for my customers. They come in, you know, they want to sit down, they want to sit with the family, they want to enjoy their lunch, they want to enjoy their ice cream. And, you know, you got kids everywhere and, you know, the parents who are using these kiosks, you know, you're gonna lose track of time. And what happens to, you know, a $5 ice cream is gonna turn into a $45 ticket, you know? Does it make sense to anybody? And, I mean, I'm not sure how all that's gonna work. Like, if you're past the time and you don't make it down to the kiosk across town, what do? You know, does it, how much are they gonna be feed for this if they don't keep feeding the meter? Do you know the cost of that?
Our current cost for a parking ticket is $20. Our police circulate town twice right now, probably about late morning and probably late afternoon. So the odds that you get a ticket are gonna be quite slim.
My customer, a $5, you know, ice cream turns into 25. Well, are they gonna be coming back again? That's gonna hurt our businesses. And,
This is gonna hurt Harbor Springs.
yeah, we are such a quaint little town. I mean, we're new to the city. We love it, and that's why we wanted to, buy something down here to serve the community. And I just see this, you know, we're not downtown Petoskey. We don't have big box stores that are bringing all of these people, you know, to our city. So we need to get, you know, that time frame that you're giving us. That's our hot times. And we need to, you know, utilize that time and make that revenue for our small businesses to just survive and pay our bills and pay our employees. And I think this is gonna hurt our city, so I'm definitely no on this. Thank you.
Well, you already had your turn, sorry.
He had it for a different topic.
Oh, that's right, okay.
You're welcome.
All running together.
So case in point, I was in Lansing last week and they have the kiosks. And I do technically okay, but I'm limited. So I looked at my license plate, then I walked over 30, 40 yards. And I forgot my license plate. So I entered in 90 rather than 80 in the number. And I paid for 2.5 hours and I was only there an hour. Because I didn't know how long I was going to be down there. So I ended up with a ticket. I had to call the lady. And my point is most of the people up here are retired people. And they're gonna forget their license plate unless they take a picture of it. And I think it's just gonna create a mess. And it wasn't a fun experience for me. So I that's all I want to say.
Hello, Council. Dana Mulder, also 372 West Summit. And I'd like to say first that this has brought out a couple really good things. First of all, that it's brought people out of the woodwork to come to a meeting. Second, that I think we're realizing that a whole lot of us are kind of on the same page, whether we're in the city or in the townships, that we feel like there's maybe better choices than paid parking. And I would like to know what we can do to help you get a millage passed, be it a regular general millage or a Headley override.
Get the word out. Tell people the truth. So, yeah.
Judy Wilson, I live at the village in Hillside, and I'm blessed to have all the people that made that building happen for me. And I've lived here I've lived up north since 1990, and I've lived in Harbor Springs since 2001. And it really bothers me to have all this stress happening in this little town over a stupid parking meter. I don't go to Petoskey because of the meters. And I'm afraid that that's going to happen here. And I don't want people parking at the village of Hillside because many people feel that the building, the front of the building is on Traverse Street, and it's not. So who's going to control all that? Am I going to have to call the police? Because I face downtown. I'm right there. Or am I going to have to call the police and say somebody is parking in our parking lot that shouldn't be there? Because it's empty most of the afternoons because the Friendship Center doesn't use it after 2, 3 o'clock. So it just stresses me as a senior that we should have to worry about this type of stuff. And there's enough people in this town that even are part-time. I used to work at Harbor Point, and I know a lot of people that made my building happen. And I feel that there's enough people in this area that can help the city without having parking needs.
Thank you.
Is anybody here for parking meters? I was.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Rocky Badu, and I'm Cindy's husband. She was kicking and getting me to say something. So my thought was initially I was for the parking meters, and it could be for a selfish reason, because what I noticed, a lot of the people that come and rent, especially Saturday and Sunday, can park there all day and take up all the parking spots for our customers. So I thought maybe parking meters can resolve that issue. But as I'm listening to a lot of the people here, I think it's probably going to cause more of an issue for our residents and our customers in the future. And the one thing I will iterate to everybody, do not use your police department to raise revenue for the city. Whether it's through certain tickets, that happened to us. It was a bad place to work. It was bad for the residents and bad for the visitors. We had a quota system that we had to give out so many tickets per day. That's not what Harbor Springs is all about. We truly love our community, and I think everybody here will probably put recommendations on how to raise funds for the city and try to help out, because we love our community and we don't want it to change too much. The other reason for it is my wife said to find another place to live if I vote for the parking meters, so. We have room for me to stay at your house, Matt. But I just want to say truly, I mean, it's great to have everybody here. It's good to have different thoughts. We appreciate the council. You guys have helped us out tremendously when we needed to get our businesses approved. It's a safe community. We want to keep it that way. And if there's anything that we can do to assist you, please let us know. If you want to hold a special meeting for us to give you recommendations, we can do so. We will volunteer. Another thought I had in my mind was, I was thinking about going getting my certification back for police and see if they need me here. I'll work a day, a week, and help out the city in the summer. You don't have to pay me. But there's a lot of people that would love to volunteer for this.
That's true.
And maybe help cut some of those costs.
Exactly right.
Thank you, everybody.
Anybody else?
We only got one.
Yeah, we only get one shot, one bite at the apple.
I was gonna say something nice.
I was gonna say something nice.
Oh, no, when we first retired up here, we were drawn to Harbor Springs for that reason, because we lived in Lansing. And when GM transferred me to Detroit, that was enough for us. We lived there 2 years and moved up here. And I was on the board in our subdivision, and people that were coming in at the time wanted sidewalks, they wanted streetlights, they wanted this, they wanted that. And I said, why in the hell did you move in here? If you want all that, go back downstate. I'm done.
Thank you.
Sorry.
All right, all right. Got a couple over here.
Yes. My name's Kate Flavin, and I live at 230 West Bluff. And I would like the city council to think a little bit deeper about the history. I look at all these people in here, and we're here for a reason, because we love Harbor Springs. We care about the future. And there's been many city councils here that have worked really hard not to let fast food restaurants come into our town. And when I think about parking meters and that kind of item in this little town, it destroys what we all are here to enjoy. So I'm asking you to take your time, think through it, but look at this crowd and know we're not happy with parking meters, and none of us are going to support that. Okay, we got to find different ways to get money. People came up with ideas here tonight, how they could work with the council about the future and where we're going to go with this. But don't take it upon yourselves to put those meters in, because it's not going to be a happy situation for those of us that love Harbor Springs. I've been here 50 years. I've paid you taxes for 50 years. Don't spend my money like that. Okay? And the other thing I'll tell you, I'm a gerontologist, and the median age here is not 40 years old. Okay, we have an older population for you also to take into consideration. So please take your time to do that.
So I'm just trying to,
Okay.
thank you.
Anyone else? Twice, thrice, let's do the computer.
Seven five one five North Lake Shore Drive. I don't see your name, but you can go.
Yes, this is Michelle Borjali. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, super. Yes, 7515 North Lakeshore Drive. I wish that I could be with everybody in the room today. I'm down in Lansing. And I wanted to say that I am opposed to the parking. I'd like to say that paid parking will be the face of the council and the mayor and the people who live here. What do we want folks to remember when they come up for their summer vacations? Also, I would like to address the mayor and the council and encourage you to use the talent in the room and use the talent on your Zoom meetings who are members here today, that there's a lot of folks who are interested in working toward other solutions. I'd be happy to join an ad hoc group. I've worked in state government for 25 years and know a lot about budgets. And I would also like to say to the folks in the room, I know I'm not supposed to address them. However, posting on Nextdoor has been very important to bring this attention of this issue to the community. And I appreciate folks who have posted there. And I love this town. I'm a newer member of our community, and I plan to be here until my property is inherited by my children. So I have a vested interest, and thank you. I appreciate this meeting. Thank you.
Bill Gromer. Bill? Is there anyone else on Zoom would like to comment? Please raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Robin Johnson?
Hi, thanks. I don't think I'm going to add any new ideas that have not already been stated today. So I wanted just to share with council and with the group something I witnessed last summer that does have to do with parking. And what I saw was late one night, it was kind of close to closing time downtown. I saw a guy trying to find a parking space outside Bar Harbor or Pearson's and was really struggling to find a parking space, couldn't find one. And I overheard him in an Irish accent say, "Lord, I can't stand this. If you open up a space for me, I swear I'll give up the drink. I'll go to mass every Sunday and be the good Catholic you always wanted me to be." Suddenly a space opens up. Without hesitation, he says, "Never mind, Lord, I found one on my own." So let's end this on a good note. I think council has has all the input they need. If you don't, you're deaf. And thank you for letting everybody talk.
Beer time.
Is there anyone else on Zoom who would like to make a comment? I will not read out the chat comments, so if this is your opportunity to speak via Zoom. I don't see any other hands.
Well, what do you think, guys? So for sure, we close, so closing. public-
Yeah, we're close to public hearing. Thank you all for your input.
Victor, why would you not read out the comments on the computer? They're all negative, obviously, they're all against paid parking. Please tell us how many there are.
99.
99 plus.
At this point, does it matter?
Take a list of names.
I'm over it. I just want you guys.
So the reason,
We can do that after the meeting.
the reason we are not reading off the comments is because people came in person, they're speaking, they're giving their name, their address, and they're speaking. The people on Zoom, council decided they should also be able to speak. They have the ability to speak. They can speak if they want.
I forgot our address.
I don't. Yeah, I don't know.
Having been reading these emails the last couple of weeks, it became clear to me that.
Can you speak up, please?
Speak up. Yeah.
Having read all these emails over the last couple of weeks, it became clear to me that we should be looking for other options than parking. So I'd like us to do that simple. I think that the Headley, we should do something this summer, but we won't get any money from it till the following year. But, I would like us to look at either the special assessments for police and parks, or to try the Headley override again. And that would be my preference, is to do the Headley override.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Al. I mean, it's obvious no one wants paid parking. And I think, we're gonna have to try and come up with an alternative plan. Whether it be another village or to have the override or special assessment.
The problem's real. We have to figure out how to fix it.
Yeah, I think we need.
And I think the parking meters is obviously unpopular. And I don't like meters.
So I'm gonna be the bad guy. Just everybody stay out there, just hear me out. I don't think we should take this off the table. I'm not saying that we shouldn't look at other options also. But in terms of revenue, which is what we are talking about, paid parking, if it's done correctly, can make a lot of sense. One thing that's upsetting to me a little bit is the proposals that Victor laid out quite clearly, especially if you looked at them ahead of time, which they're all out there on Friday afternoon. A lot of the concerns that I'm hearing aren't taking into consideration the B proposal where we're offering permits. I didn't hear people really acknowledging any of that for the folks that live here or can purchase one. I certainly understand most of the comments in this room tonight have been negative, as my email at home. I've also had many conversations with folks that are not negative. And we have letters sitting in front of us here that are positive letters. So I understand that there's a lot of concern about paid parking. And I'm certainly happy to look at other options, but I don't think we should just take it off the table.
I think we still need to consider it as one option.
It's an option.
Because I think we're going to need more than one option to keep our revenues healthy in this town. I think we're gonna need diversity of revenue, and I think paid parking is one that could make good sense if it's done correctly. With other things also.
Like Nancy, it's been a disappointing process. The silver lining is that you're all here. It's very rare that we have this number of people in the room to discuss any topic. Last time this happened was another very emotional topic. But I too have reached out and talked to business owners who understand the need for it, have expressed their concerns, but are basically supportive because they understand that it is a source of revenue for the city, and it's a source of revenue that does not come from the taxpayers. This is an opportunity for the visitors to our town to participate in the cost of running the city. I don't think it's an outrageous idea. It is clearly, for the people in this room, an unpopular idea. So I agree. We should continue to explore, but the implication that several people have made that we're doing this for some nefarious reason and that we don't know what we're doing is insulting. You know, we're here to represent you. All of our meetings are public. The budget is available. If there's someone that wants to come down and look at the budget, Nick will meet with you and go over it. Any of us would welcome the opportunity to sit down with you and talk about it. And 90% of the people that I gave my number to called me and we talked about it and they shared their opinion and I shared mine. I share some of the concerns that have been voiced. I don't think if we were to implement paid parking that we should do it on Sundays. I very much like the idea of not affecting the day of praise to be where we're charging parking. One consistent message from businesses, even in support of the revenue stream and the diversification, were employees, and I share that. We have a tough business situation, and we should not penalize employers or employees by further burdening them, but we have the ability to control that. Hours, all of this is under the city's control. The implication that this is being rushed through is BS. We've been talking about this since October. We've discussed it several times. We're here because the voters voted and they voted down the Headley override. Did we use the right wording for the actual ballot, much of which was dictated by the state? Maybe not. But for the people, I was pleased by the number of people that took the time to study it and understand it with a non-trivial topic. I've talked to people who feel that they would not, they categorically said, we will not vote for Headley. We will not vote for a specific millage. We want the revenue from the visitors to our town to share the perspective that I love the idea that I've heard about Harbor Springs in the 50s, 60s, 70s. I've heard great stories. That's not the town we live in today. We have a tourist town. I don't find downtown Harbor Springs charming in the summer. It's busy. We don't come down in the summer, and many of the people that I talked to shared the perspective that, you know, we kind of rent out the town for the season and then we come back down and enjoy our quaint town. That's fine. We're only proposing getting contributions from visitors during the summer. Not a perfect solution, but we're here because voters did not want Headley, voters did not want cuts. If we do not do this, if we do not find another source, when we come to budget time in November, there will be cuts. We had that discussion at the last budget cycle. It's not something we want to do. We said it at the last meeting. We don't love the idea of downtown parking, but it's a source of revenue which the city needs. So we will take that into account as we explore other opportunities, but it's not going away unless we find a better solution, a more palatable solution. But I don't know that a millage proposal will pass. The people in this room say, bring us a reasonable millage proposal and we'll pass it. You don't have that control. There are a lot of voters who do not want an increased millage. Gas prices are going up, food prices are going up, the cost of everything is going up for the city. and for the taxpayers. They don't want a millage increase. How the numbers shake out, with that magical number where we flip to 51%, we have a millage, there's no guarantee.
Well put. My conscience just spoke. I'm good. My attitude's settled down a little bit now, so. One thing I'll say, obviously, everybody's come together here. One thing I'm not happy about is all the shit emails that we got. I mean, the attitudes that we got thrown at us thinking that, I mean, me for one, I got over 100 years family history in this town, and think that I sit up here for my health to take the crap that us as a group got is bullshit, quite honestly.
Excuse me, watch your language. You're.
Excuse me, I sit up here, you don't.
That's correct, but I.
Well, you know what? I've taken all the crap for the past couple of weeks. I think I'm allowed up here to give my opinion. And I've absorbed it all. I took it here tonight and everything else. None of us want paid parking.
Mr. Cubs, do you know that you were heard at the last city council meeting with an open microphone saying who the FUCK are these people and where do they come from?
Yes.
It's us, that's.
Yes.
It's not time for you to talk.
Yeah.
But in general, I think we're all agreement that we don't want paid parking. And we're gonna try to do our best to come up with a general rule of thumb here. I kind of agree with John that I don't know if a millage will pass. If we can do a special millage, you know, midsummer, I think that's something, you know, we need to look at our options. But I agree with Nancy. I don't think we need to take parking off the table right now, because it's the only thing that makes sense currently. But hopefully there's some other stuff that will come up. So right now, I would just make a motion, if we're done talking about it, to table our.
I just wanted to say one thing real quick, and I agree with you. My hope would be lots of folks have volunteered to help, and I of course appreciate that. Judging from the emails I've gotten in the last 2 weeks, I hope the attitude can change, or I will not welcome your help, in all honesty, because they were very hurtful and very uncalled for. So if people truly want to help, that's great. That is great. I hope that there are folks out there that will do that. And I'm sorry some folks took offense at the way John spoke, but come and read my emails from the last 2 weeks. So I think we all need to take a big breath and take a step back, and we can work on this together with some respect. So.
I just think we should make a motion to table this till our first meeting in March and review our options at our next meeting, in February. Nail down.
And encourage folks to write, email, talk to us with some other options that are, you know, that are viable options. I think we're all open to that, but let's do it respectfully. Goes both ways. It's exhausting. You know, it's exhausting.
So I have a motion on the table to table the discussion until a March meeting.
Talk about it with the next one. Well, I'm a little confused on that.
I think any vote should be tabled till March, but I think we should have further discussion at our next February meeting. Or look at the other options.
See what we can do for our different village options. A possible special assessment or combination of the above.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
All right, Al Dyke.
Yes.
John Cubs. Nancy Rondell.
Yes.
John Leo.
Yes.
Matt Legira.
Yes.
Motion carried to table, have more discussion in the February meeting. Where there's potential vote on anything in March.
All right, so,
Manager report.
yeah. We still have a meeting going on, so if you guys can keep it quiet a little bit, please.
We're still working. If you guys want to go out and talk, do it outside, please.
First, before we go to city manager report, we did have a resignation on the planning commission. Andy Bowman, the chair, has resigned, so we will, he just is not able to commit. He was going to miss a lot of meetings this year, so he's been our chair for 2 decades. I think, not our chair, but a planning commission member for 2 decades. I think he did a great job. So we're gonna miss his knowledge and his history, but we'll advertise for his member. City manager's report. We have a couple of topics to talk about here. MDOT has put up some more obstacles for us with our electric M119 pole replacement project. They now said, at first they said only 600 feet of the project was in question and potentially needed to be moved to the north side. Now,
Because of the stability.
of the stability of the slopes, they're saying now they want the entire 2 miles to be reconsidered, moving to the north side, for us to do a several $100,000 study to determine if what we do will affect the slope. So we're still in talks with them, but it's not looking like this project's gonna happen.
What's the downside of this pump? What's the risk?
Our wires, our system's old there, and it just, you're gonna lose a lot of voltage. You're gonna be losing-
Voltage drop.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, minor issues that come up that add to a big issue in the end, but there's not a risk of delaying it in the short term, a couple years. But this was a phased out project, if you remember, we did phase 1 and phase 2, 2019, 2020. MDOT had no problem with phase 1 and phase 2, but all of a sudden they're looking at M119 and tunnel trees and are saying that now there's issues there, so. Just one thing to keep in mind, I did mention earlier today that we did, Parks Director Rich Rubin did submit the grant for the EDA boardwalk grant. I don't know how long it'll take back to here. I mean, they said September 30th is the ultimate deadline, but they made it seem like they'll get back to us in the spring, late winter, early spring, so. We're over $200,000 in donations for the skate park. We're confident we can get to what we need in the next 3 or 4 months.
What's the goal?
$350,000 is minimum goal, so.
So this is an example of, for specific projects.
Yep.
Getting the community to contribute.
We also received notification from Tree City USA, I should say, the Arbor Day Foundation, that we are designated Tree City USA 2021. So our hard work paid off there. And we did have a couple meetings. The tree board meeting met in January to discuss 2022 goals, as well as the planning commission met on February 3rd for a rescheduled meeting that they elected a chair, Bill Mulder, the chair of the planning commission, and they also discussed 2022 goals. Of course, short-term rentals is on that list. Then I just had some basic meetings, CCE, MPPA, and also I met the new housing director, program director for Emmett County, Andrea Jacobs, and we'll see a lot more of her at planning commission and at council. That's all I have.
Okay.
Old and new business.
New business?
I think I'm nothing we haven't talked about.
All right. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah.